up on the show, an exclusive interview with ADB's private sector specialist, Dr. Paul Holden.
There are far too many discretionary regulations.
Also tonight, our new monthly Entrepreneur Engaged segment, where we get down to business with some of the country's most innovative and creative entrepreneurs. We'll have those stories shortly, but first we take a look at the challenges of doing business in PNG. PNG's economy consists of a large informal sector, which employs the majority of the population, and a small formal sector, concentrated mainly on the export of natural resources. Mineral deposits, including copper, gold, and oil, account for nearly 2/3 of export earnings. 85% of the people sustain their livelihoods through agricultural means. Like other countries, PNG has many challenges with regards to its economy. One of the challenges that raises a lot of concerns is the high cost of doing business. The government aims to work effectively with the private sector to address the issues regarding the high cost of doing business and other challenges for the country's economy. Dennis Herrera with the reports.
Maintaining investor confidence is a concern for the government and the private sector in Papua New Guinea. Among all determining factors of investor confidence, the high cost of doing business in the country is a worry at this point in time.
Business needs to make a profit, otherwise business doesn't proceed. So it needs to be able to make a return on its investment, and therefore it needs to be able to have more income than it's actually spending. And if it has to spend a lot of money on addressing crime, on high security costs, building having its own generators, having to build its own other infrastructure, and a range of other costs, like with long delays in getting approvals for business permits or securing land. These all add to the costs.
The cost of power, the cost of internet, the cost of mobile phones, they are the highest in the world. So when you look at it, I think the time is right now. It's right for the government to intervene, undertake a major reform, market reform in the ISOE, and thereby reducing the cost, and all these costs, come down, and it will reduce the basic cost of doing business in PNG.
The O'Neill-led government has taken reforms since taking office in 2011 to address development issues in improving PNG's economy. Asian Development Bank private sector specialist Paul Holden visited the country last week, in which he emphasized on the promotion of economic development and producing an environment conducive to investment. Speaking at a business breakfast hosted by the Port Moresby Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Holden said despite the many challenges for business in PNG, the country has improved in some areas of the economy over the last decade.
PNG has been the fastest growing economy in the region. Formal employment has increased on average by something like 6% a year. The private sector has essentially doubled, and what has happened is the foundation and the emergence of a middle class is becoming apparent. And this is really a key issue in terms of sustainable development.
The Asian Development Bank is implementing its private sector development initiative, which is co-financed by ADB and the Australia and New Zealand governments. The initiative is aimed at creating an enabling environment for private sector to flourish in Pacific countries. A report has been produced by the organization on the challenges of doing business in PNG. Mr. Holden commented on PNG's economy and challenges from the report that has been produced.
There were political uncertainty, and that was a particular problem in the early part of this period, of this 10-year period. There were law and order problems. There was instability of laws, rules, and regulations. There were problems with a relationship with government. Corruption was an issue, and infrastructure was an issue. Now, I would really wish to tell you that all of these problems have gone away, but unfortunately they haven't.
He highlighted things that need to be improved in order for business to thrive in PNG as a developing nation.
Something that economists like to call public goods. What are they? Well, they're the things that markets don't supply. Markets are wonderful things, but they don't supply everything. And there are some goods or factors that only government really can supply. And what are they? They're things like law and order. We don't want the private sector engaged in the enforcement and prosecution of law, because this tends to evolve to vigilante justice.
PNG's economy has a formal sector focused mainly on the export of natural resources and an informal sector employing the majority of the population. Agriculture provides a subsistence livelihood for 85% of the people. Mineral deposits, including copper, gold, and oil, account for nearly 2/3 of export earnings. Natural gas reserves amount to an estimated 155 billion cubic meters. According to the Index Mundi website, the government faces the challenge of ensuring transparency and accountability for revenues flowing from resource projects. In 2011 and 2012, Parliament passed legislation that created an offshore sovereign wealth fund to manage government surpluses from mineral, oil and natural gas projects. In recent years, the government has opened up markets in telecommunications and air transport, making both more affordable to the people. Numerous challenges still face the O'Neill-Dion government, including providing physical security for foreign investors, regaining investor confidence, restoring integrity to state institutions, promoting economic efficiency by privatizing moribund state institutions, and maintaining good relations with Australia, its former colonial ruler. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill responded to Mr. Holden during the business breakfast, highlighting the government's efforts in improving PNG's economy.
A lot has been covered, and I know that doing business in Papua New Guinea is not easy. But many a times, having been on both sides of the equation, just so to say, coming from a private sector and now serving in public sector, I know most of the issues that are there that needs for us to work together. It's always easy to say that when everything goes wrong, it's easy to blame the government. When everything goes right, it's easy to say that private sector is doing well for the country. And over the next few years, you will find that some of the reforms will start to happen in terms of introducing legislation that will give us more certainty. Because when we go out to the people, people must know that they are electing governments that they will last. And people must elect governments based on policy rather than personality. So I think our country is heading in the right direction, and I think political stability will make sure that it will give certainty to the business community. And I want to tell you this, that for our government, we know that we cannot have growth in the economy of the country without the private sector.
According to the Index of Economic Freedom website, PNG's economic freedom score is 53.9, making its economy the 132nd freest in the 2014 index. Its score is 0.3 points higher than last year, with improvements in the control of government spending and monetary freedom counterbalanced by declines in freedom from corruption, business freedom, and fiscal freedom. PNG is ranked 28 out of 42 countries in the Asia-Pacific region, and its overall score is lower than the world average.
The government often spends its time focusing on the things that government doesn't need to do. Government needs to provide those public goods for both householders, for the community, and as I say, these are law and order, making sure the government systems are functioning properly, so countering corruption, including corruption within government, or particularly corruption within government, addressing those infrastructure needs, including roads, but power and so on.
There's not enough work done to properly plan the urban centers in the country. So that is the start point. With the lack of proper urban planning, you can see a lot of issues associated with or issues that comes with it. And one of them obviously will be lack of land or available land for development. Therefore, you see issues like no proper settlement, no proper urban land for development, and you see people being pushed to the fringe of the city.
So as the economic challenges continue for PNG, more work needs to be done in key areas to foster growth and prosperity. As efforts are made to reduce the cost of doing business in the country, investors are on the watch to undertake opportunities favorable to them.
Stay tuned. After the break, David Kahn speaks to Dr. Paul Holden of the Asian Development Bank on the challenges of doing business in PNG. Welcome back to the program. The government faces the challenge of growing PNG's economy, while at the same time maintaining investor confidence. Dr. Paul Holden of the Asian Development Bank, during his visit last week to PNG, gave an analysis of what has happened to PNG's economy and what needs to take place to enhance economic prosperity. This is based on a report that has been put together by ADB through a 10-year research as part of its private sector development initiative. Here's David Kahn with the interview.
Welcome to Business PNG. With me in the studio today, Dr. Paul Holden, the co-author of the report I'm holding here by the Asian Development Bank and INA, Challenges of Doing Business in Papua New Guinea. Paul, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, David.
And welcome back to Papua New Guinea, not
David,
the first time.
It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see you again.
Thank you. Co-authored this with David Friedman
Yes.
with the Asian Development Bank. Just tell us a little bit about what it's all about.
This is the third in a series of 5-year surveys that we have done of the attitudes of the business community to developments in Papua New Guinea. We surveyed them in a number of different areas on things like confidence in government, corruption issues, law and order issues, and regulation.
So this was 2002, 7 and 12.
That's
the
correct,
last one.
yes.
Yeah,
The
okay.
last one was completed at the end of 2012.
Okay, why a 5-year cycle?
Because
Hoping things will change.
we do a 5-year cycle because we believe that that's long enough for some changes to happen, but it's not so short as you can't see any development. The first survey that we did of SOEs, PNG did not participate. And it was
Deliberately so.
very deliberately so. But subsequently they said, well, we need to look at this issue, and would you please include us in the survey, and would you please benchmark the performance of our SOEs against those in the region?
So that was a commendable approach by this government.
This was a huge step, and I think it's, again, grounds for a lot of optimism regarding the willingness and the perception of the need to reform. But our view is that essentially government has no role running businesses. I think they can fund businesses, they can assist in providing funding when the private sector is not stepping up, but effectively government and business don't really mix.
Tell us what the issue is. I mean, the way of this, it's our national asset, you can't have it, we're not going to sell it. I mean, what is the real issue?
Well,
If you wanted to turn it on your head.
The point I made in my report is it's not who owns the assets, who benefits from them. And essentially, if you have a government-owned electricity company, a government-owned airline that is providing high-cost, low-quality service, then people are suffering from government ownership. They're not benefiting.
Yes.
And we have a very strong view that it really is the efficiency of the use of the assets. And around the region, we find that state-owned enterprises operate far less effectively than do private business. Now, if I could just continue for a moment, there are some reasons for it, because quite often government will view the state-owned enterprise as an instrument of social policy.
Yes.
And will command or direct the SOE to provide a service for which it's not fully compensated. So one has to have some sympathy for the operators of state-owned enterprises, because often they have what we call unfunded mandates. They are not fully compensated for things they are required to do.
Yeah. So things like rural electrification that don't make money, a water authority saying give water to a settlement, when there can be no recovery at all.
That is exactly right, but there are better ways of doing it. And we've seen around the world that a much more effective way of providing, say, rural service by the private sector is to ask private sector companies to bid on the subsidies that they would receive to do this, and to take the lowest cost subsidy.
So there's clearly different ways to do it. It's a different mindset. Let's just maybe leave that as a work in progress.
Well, it obviously is work in progress, but from questions that we had, and one particular from the Treasurer, there is an awareness that it's an issue.
Yeah, surely. Okay. He wants to see his money spent the best way.
Well, as he should. And if it's a drain on the budget, it's taking things away from other areas, especially health and education.
Yes, of course. Let's talk about some of the other challenges to doing business. There's a bit of luxury in this. We've had 10 years to look at these three studies. I mean, what would you say has been the overriding challenge that won't go away?
Well, the overriding challenge, and consistently ranked as the highest issue, is law and order, crime, and related to that is corruption. And this is something that is a theme that runs through all three of the surveys. We do see some improvement in this area. And we also see, I believe, a much stronger commitment on the part of government to deal with the problems now than, say, we perceived 5 years ago.
One of the graphs actually showed a almost 50% decrease since 2007 in businesses' attitude to how law and order affected the business.
Yes, I think what we're seeing is kind of a switch. We're seeing a decline in some types of criminal behavior that affect business. But we're also seeing more concern for petty corruption, particularly, which tends to thrive in an area or an environment where there are a lot of discretionary rules and regulations.
Good segue into regulation there. I mean, it was the report saying that PNG is still over-regulated from a business point of view?
It's very much saying that. It's saying that there are far too many regulations, and it's saying there are far too many discretionary regulations.
What do you mean by a discretionary regulation?
Regulations that are open to different interpretations and for which the rules are not clearly defined.
So a customs officer, assessor deciding this rate of duty, that rate of duty, when it should just be flat.
Exactly.
This is the rule, this is what you're charged.
That's precisely it. Yeah. And so, and this type of behavior tends to thrive in areas where regulations are complicated as well.
And the report said that's growing.
The report sees that as a growing problem. Now, I think we have to put it in perspective, because there have been improvements in other areas. So when there is an improvement in one area, the perception of problems in another tends to rise.
Don't go away. When we come back, our new Entrepreneur Engaged segment. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Business PNG. Although there are many challenges of doing business in the country, there are also many striving entrepreneurs who aim to succeed in their various journeys of business. We begin our new Entrepreneur Engaged segment this month by putting the spotlight on the very people who run the spotlights. Business PNG had a chat with the owners of Lights, Sounds and Events company, Blue 17.
Narai Barnum, Blue 17.
Elwin Agonia, Blue 17. It was just pretty much finding a gap where there wasn't really much focus in. Events that were happening were sporadic, just one every 3 months, maybe 4 months. And we thought, well, let's just... Everybody was used to just like Oh, well, we'll just do this. Look, it's PNG. It doesn't matter if it's not sitting correctly. Nobody's going to notice. We wanted to change that attitude where, hey, if you're going to do something, do it properly or don't do it at all. And if we were going to be involved, I'm sorry, but we're going to do it properly. Yes, it'll probably cost you a little bit more to make sure that's fixed properly, but for safety's sake, it's got to be done properly. Which is why we got into the game. Hey, let's do it properly. Let's show the rest of the world that we're up amongst the rest of the world. We're not just PNG, and we're not sitting in the caves and hanging candles and light bulbs anymore. We can make the lights move. We can make the sound awesome. So that's pretty much the reason why we wanted to get into the game, to take PNG to the next level, to appreciate what is out there in the outside world. And also for the international artists to come into PNG and say, oh, okay, yeah, you can do it.
We essentially started wanting to get into production. So you have event management, and then you have your own event production. So a production would be something that you put together and create from scratch. You find the sponsors, you do. So a lot of the concerts would be classed as productions. A lot of events, fairs, festivals, that's a production. The guiding lights or rules that Elwyn always instilled in us, in the team, was it's our reputation. If you do one thing wrong, you'll lose it. So we've always prided ourselves in our reputation and built on that. And that's what's gotten us job after job after job. And people kept coming back based on the reputation.
When it comes to planning an event, I'd say that's the biggest expense for us, because there's a lot of running around, driving around. Fuel's not cheap, particularly petrol. And then there's all the ancillary stuff that goes with it when it comes to executing the event, all the gaffer tape, batteries, those are little things, but if you actually don't plan for it or prepare, and then you get to the job site on the day and like, oops, yeah, okay, anybody got a spare $200? We need to buy this, or those sort of things. But then there's all the phone calls you need to make to call suppliers, especially if it's a really big event and you have overseas suppliers. Yes, that does take up a fair bit.
I suppose our biggest expenses are labour and the rentals, the leasing, the property prices at the moment. When we talk about rentals, we're not just talking about our offices, we're talking about the fact that we now have to think about our own staff, our team that come to work every day, our management team. As much as we're a small business, we've got to supply for them. We've got to go, we're not going to put them in some low-cost housing where the water doesn't work, or there's rats inside, or there's really not nice conditions, and pay 700 kina a week. I'd rather put them somewhere that's 1,500 kina a week and have them live nicely and come to work and give us their best. And I suppose our biggest advantage, well, not advantage, but saving grace has been the fact that we have the support of our team. We have a phenomenal team. One of the most difficult things in business, in small business, might be in business in general, but is finding the right people. Our most valuable resources, our most prized resources, are our people and our equipment. We look after both of them, they look after us. So to answer, are we going to grow our numbers? With the plans we have, we'll have to grow our numbers, yes. But we're not just going to, we're going to grow with strategy. And it's going to be about the quality of the personnel. It's going to be about, we want to be a company that, we want to have a culture that everybody wants to work with. That's what we're going to grow. That's what we're going to grow. Our vision then was to set a new benchmark in events, in the events industry, to basically set a standard, a level of event and entertainment in Papua New Guinea. It was non-existent at that stage pretty much. We got in, we worked it, and we last year looked around us and went, whoa, okay. Whether or not we did it, it's happened. So what we were after was that it would be the norm for a client to turn around and ask, oh, can you find an event manager and get them to manage this, or can you hire some audiovisual equipment? We wanted it to be the norm for people to have decor set up in all their conferences and meetings, to want it to look nice, to want it to be presented at a certain standard, and not just, oh yeah, you go in and those chairs are uncovered and just put the screens up and cords everywhere, and it doesn't matter that it goes off during the show. We wanted it to be a certain level, but it's tough. It is not regular income. It is very sporadic income. You either have it or you don't, and you've really got to not want to be in it for the money. You've got to want to be in it for the reputation. You've got to want to have the reputation of perfection.
When the show is on and you're trying to troubleshoot, it's very hard unless you have them labeled, you see? So we know that's monitor send 3, send 2, and send 1.
6.
Hi.
Bit of a task. Try and get it right. But all in all, it makes it much easier. So being on a digital console, we can pre-program the shows. Like each of the different singers, they have their own requirements on the monitors.
Because of how seamless we make an event look, the client doesn't realize how long it takes they pay us up until or for the event day. They don't pay us for the 1 to 2 week process of cleanup that it takes afterwards, but they expect all the equipment returned immediately. And that's one of the hardest things. And in the meantime, we're trying to still make money by having another job the week after that event. So we've got to juggle all these things, and you've got to be, we'd like to think that we are certainly, we've got our systems together now, and that we are very competitive on a world market. We're a very competitive event management company, but that's been a struggle. That's been a lot of learnings. That's been a lot of not showing the client what's really going on behind the scenes. There's been a lot of we can do this. We know we can do this. We've got to find a way to do this. It doesn't matter how tough it is. Don't you let the client know that you're struggling with it. You find a way to do it, because where there's a will, there is a way, and there always is.
You can never give up. You can bash your head against a brick wall. You can try knocking on the doors. If they don't open, go to the next one, go to the next one, and just keep trying. People knock you down. They'll say stuff about you, but that's okay. Alright, watch this space, because I will come back and I will kick harder. That's the way we do it.
And that's all we have for you tonight. Make sure to visit our webpage using the address now shown on your screen. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Until next week, a pleasant evening to you. I'm Leanne Jarari, and this is Business PNG.